Sometimes life puts people and situations in our path that feel unbearable. You think, how can I even begin to forgive? How can I let go? But here's the truth: carrying hate only weighs you down. It keeps you from experiencing peace, joy, and growth. Today, I want to share a journey, a way of seeing the world where it becomes almost impossible to hate. Because when you understand, when you rise above the pain, you realize that hate is a prison, and freedom begins the moment you choose compassion. Hate is one of the heaviest burdens a person can carry, and yet it is one that we often take on willingly without realizing the weight it places upon us. When someone wrongs us, when life seems unjust, our instinct is to tighten our grip on that anger, to nurture it, to let it define us in some way. There is a certain appeal to hating someone or something. It feels protective, as if by holding on to it, we are shielding ourselves from further harm. But the truth is that hate does not protect us. Hate does not shield us. Hate only binds us to a version of life that is limited, small, and confined. The first step in truly understanding the impossibility of hate is to recognize the immense toll it takes on the one who carries it. Physical and mental health are affected, relationships are strained, and the beauty of life becomes muted. The mind that holds hate is rarely free, and the heart that clings to resentment rarely feels light. To understand hate, one must first understand fear. Beneath the surface of every hateful thought, there is fear. Fear of being wronged, fear of losing, fear of inadequacy, fear of not being seen or understood. Hate is a mask that fear wears to appear strong, but beneath it, there is vulnerability. The person who hates is often the one who has been hurt, the one who has experienced betrayal, or the one who has faced injustice. And yet, by holding on to that hate, we do not heal, we do not grow. Instead, we become prisoners of our own emotions. It is here that the paradox emerges. The act of hating someone else is not an act that harms them nearly as much as it harms us. It is an internal erosion, a slow and quiet damage that we allow to infiltrate our daily lives, our thoughts, and our interactions. The impossibility of hate is not about the absence of injustice in the world. It is not about ignoring wrongs or pretending that pain does not exist. It is about recognizing that the power of hate lies entirely in our hands. And when we release it, we reclaim that power for ourselves. When we begin to see hate through this lens, we start to recognize its futility. The energy spent on hating someone could be used to understand them, to forgive them, or simply to let them exist in their own imperfect way. Forgiveness is not about condoning wrongdoing. It is about freeing ourselves from the mental chains that keep us tethered to anger. It is about choosing to rise above the instinct to retaliate and instead embracing the possibility of peace. Peace is not passive. It is an active choice. It is a conscious decision to not allow hate to dictate our behavior, our thoughts, or our emotions. And in that choice, in that moment of letting go, we discover something profound: that life is far too short to carry around the unnecessary weight of hate. One of the most powerful realizations in this process is understanding that every person we encounter is fighting their own battles, carrying their own burdens, and acting out of their own fears. When someone acts cruelly or unjustly, it is often a reflection of their own pain, not a true measure of our worth or value. This is not to excuse harmful behavior, but to recognize that hate directed outward often stems from a lack of awareness, a lack of understanding, and a lack of connection. When we begin to view others with empathy, even when it is difficult, hate starts to lose its grip. Empathy does not mean we accept or justify harm. It means we see the humanity in others, the flaws, the struggles, the imperfections that make them who they are. And in seeing humanity, we realize that hate is a choice, not a necessity. To truly embrace the impossibility of hate, one must also confront the ways in which it manifests internally. Hate is not always obvious. It can appear as a lingering resentment, a subtle judgment, a feeling of superiority or disdain. It can live quietly in our hearts, influencing our actions without our conscious awareness. Awareness is the key. By noticing when we feel irritation, anger, or bitterness toward another, we have an opportunity to pause and ask ourselves why. What is it that fuels this emotion? Is it fear? Is it pain? Is it a desire for control or validation? By interrogating these feelings, we begin to dismantle the structures that sustain hate and build a foundation for understanding and release. There is also a profound interconnectedness that emerges when we choose to let go of hate. Our world is a network of relationships, experiences, and shared humanity. The energy we project outward R&D has a ripple effect. When we act with compassion instead of hate, when we respond with curiosity instead of judgment, we influence the world around us in subtle but meaningful ways. The impossibility of hate is not about ignoring reality, it is about transforming our relationship to it. By refusing to allow hate to dictate our reactions, we participate in a larger movement of empathy and connection that benefits not only ourselves but everyone we encounter. It is helpful to consider the temporality of life when confronting hate. Our time is finite, fragile, and unpredictable. We do not know how many days we have, how many moments we will experience, or how many opportunities we will miss if we spend them trapped in anger. Each moment spent hating is a moment lost, a moment in which joy, love, and growth could have flourished. Understanding the impermanence of life can shift our perspective, helping us to see that hate is not only unnecessary, but a squandered opportunity. By choosing to release it, we honor the limited time we have and create space for experiences that truly enrich our existence. Another key realization is that hate often stems from unmet expectations. We expect others to act in ways that align with our sense of fairness, morality, or personal standards, and when they fail to meet those expectations, we feel betrayed. The world, however, does not operate according to our personal desires. People are imperfect, circumstances are unpredictable, and outcomes rarely match our plans. When we accept this reality, when we learn to navigate life with flexibility and openness, the grip of hate begins to loosen. Acceptance is not resignation, it is the acknowledgement that the world is not a mirror of our wishes, but a dynamic, complex system in which we must find our own peace. Understanding hate also requires a look inward at the ways we project our own insecurities onto others. Often the things we despise in others are reflections of the parts of ourselves we have not yet embraced. Recognizing this can be uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. When we see our own flaws mirrored in the actions of others, we have a choice to respond with defensiveness and anger, or to respond with awareness and growth. Choosing the latter is a practice that gradually erodes the foundation of hate, replacing it with insight, humility, and compassion. History and personal experience show us countless examples of the destructive power of hate. Societies torn apart by division, communities fractured by prejudice, relationships destroyed by misunderstanding. These are the consequences of allowing hate to fester. And yet, for every example of destruction, there are equally compelling examples of triumph, reconciliation, and healing. People who have faced unimaginable pain and have chosen forgiveness, who have confronted cruelty with understanding, and who have transformed resentment into empathy, demonstrate that hate is not inevitable. It can be overcome, and in overcoming it, we find freedom. Meditation, reflection, and mindfulness are practical tools in this journey. By cultivating a calm, observant mind, we create a space in which emotions can be processed without being acted upon impulsively. This space allows us to choose how we respond, to recognize when hate is arising, and to consciously release it. Breath by breath, thought by thought, moment by moment, we train ourselves to live in a state of awareness where hate has no foothold. This is not a one-time achievement, but a continuous practice, a daily commitment to living in alignment with our highest values rather than our lowest impulses. Relationships play a critical role in shaping our capacity for or against hate. Surrounding ourselves with people who model empathy, kindness, and understanding reinforces our own ability to respond in kind. Observing how others navigate conflict, disappointment, and injustice can teach us alternative ways to respond without resorting to hatred. Likewise, maintaining boundaries with those who perpetuate negativity is essential, not as an act of revenge, but as an act of self-preservation and clarity. We cannot control others, but we can control how we allow them to affect us. Education and exposure to diverse perspectives also contribute to the impossibility of hate. When we engage with different cultures, philosophies, and life experiences, we expand our understanding of the human condition. We realize that differences are not threats, but opportunities for growth, and that many of the judgments that fuel hate are rooted in ignorance or fear. Knowledge is a powerful antidote to hate because it illuminates the complexity of the world and reminds us that people act from motives and experiences that we may never fully comprehend. Compassion is the natural complement to this understanding. Compassion does not require agreement, it does not demand approval, and it does not negate accountability. It simply recognizes the shared human experience and responds with empathy rather than aggression. By practicing compassion consistently, hate loses its relevance. The energy once devoted to grudges and resentment is redirected toward understanding, toward action that heals rather than harms, and toward creating a life of meaning and connection. Art, storytelling, and creative expression also reveal the futility of hate. Through music, literature, and visual arts, we encounter perspectives and emotions that may never have been our own. We feel the pain, joy, and struggle of others as if it were our own, and in doing so we cultivate empathy. Creativity bridges gaps, dissolves barriers, and reminds us that our shared humanity is far greater than our differences. When we internalize these lessons, we recognize that hate is not only unnecessary but contrary to the natural inclination of the human heart toward connection and understanding. Ultimately, the impossibility of hate lies in the conscious choice to refuse its space in our lives. Life will inevitably present challenges, injustices, and betrayals, but the act of hating is never mandatory. We can choose awareness, understanding, and compassion instead. Each decision to rise above anger, each moment we respond with curiosity instead of judgment, strengthens our resilience and expands our capacity for love. In this way, hate becomes not a force to be wielded, but a lesson in the power of release and the freedom that comes from refusing to be bound by negativity. The practice of gratitude reinforces this shift. When we focus on the blessings, joys, and small victories in our own lives, the things that once seemed intolerable lose their prominence. Gratitude does not erase pain or injustice, but it provides a lens through which we can view life with clarity and balance. By noticing the good, even in difficult circumstances, we diminish the influence of hate and cultivate a mindset in which understanding and compassion naturally flourish. Empathy and listening are equally vital. When we take the time to genuinely hear others, to attempt to understand their experiences and motivations, we disarm the instinct to hate. Listening is not passive, it is an active engagement that requires humility and openness, even when we disagree, even when we feel hurt. The act of listening reminds us that every person is complex and multifaceted. This awareness undermines the simplicity of hate and encourages a more nuanced and compassionate approach to life. The journey toward understanding the impossibility of hate is ongoing. There is no final destination, no permanent state of perfection. It is a practice, a commitment, and a mindset that requires patience and persistence. There will be moments of frustration, moments when old patterns resurface, moments when anger seems inevitable. And yet, each time we notice these emotions and choose a different response, we strengthen the foundation of empathy, understanding, and freedom. Over time, this choice becomes more natural, and hate loses its grip more permanently. Even the smallest acts of kindness, when performed consistently, can chip away at the power of hate. A gentle word, a patient response, a willingness to forgive or to step back instead of reacting. These seemingly minor gestures accumulate and transform both our internal world and the external one we inhabit. By choosing to act with awareness rather than reaction, we reclaim our energy and redirect it toward building a life rooted in connection, compassion, and understanding. Reflection on mortality reinforces the importance of releasing hate. Time is fleeting, and the moments we have with others are precious and finite. Clinging to resentment, anger, or bitterness is a refusal to acknowledge the impermanence of life and the value of each encounter. By embracing the brevity of existence, we find motivation to let go of negativity, to seek understanding, and to cultivate relationships that matter. In doing so, we honor not only ourselves but also those around us, creating a legacy of compassion rather than conflict. Spirituality, in whatever form it may take, often emphasizes the futility of hate. Many traditions teach that love, understanding, and forgiveness are higher virtues, and that clinging to hatred distances us from our true nature. Whether through prayer, meditation, or mindful living, the act of connecting with something greater than ourselves reminds us that life is interconnected and that harming others emotionally through hate ultimately harms ourselves. This recognition reinforces the wisdom of letting go and choosing a path of empathy. Hate thrives in isolation, in secrecy, and in silence. By speaking about our emotions, by sharing experiences, and by seeking support, we prevent hate from taking root. Community, dialogue, and mutual understanding create an environment in which empathy becomes the default response rather than anger or resentment. The impossibility of hate is strengthened when we remember that we are not alone in our struggles and that by supporting one another, we reinforce the choice to respond with love rather than hostility. Nature offers yet another lesson. Observing the cycles of life, growth, decay, and renewal reminds us that destruction is a part of existence, but so is regeneration. Hate is destructive, but it is not permanent. By aligning ourselves with the rhythms of life, we recognize that every ending carries the seed of a beginning, every conflict holds the potential for resolution, and every act of release creates space for growth. In this way, letting go of hate becomes a natural, even necessary part of living fully and consciously. History's great figures who overcame hatred illustrate the transformative power of release. They faced oppression, betrayal, and cruelty, yet chose a different path. They acted not from resentment, but from vision, compassion, and courage. Their lives demonstrate that the act of refusing to hate is not passive. It is a radical form of strength, an assertion of autonomy over one's own emotions, and a commitment to a higher way of being. By studying and emulating such examples, we gain insight into the profound impact that choosing empathy over hatred can have, both on our own lives and on the world around us. The personal journey toward releasing hate is deeply intimate. It involves confronting uncomfortable truths, examining long-held beliefs, and acknowledging the ways in which we have contributed to cycles of negativity. This self-examination requires courage and honesty. It requires a willingness to face pain without letting it define us, and in doing so, we cultivate resilience, maturity, and a clarity that allows us to navigate life with a lighter heart and a more open mind. Anger and resentment are emotions we all encounter in life, and yet most of us have not been taught how to truly transform them. From an early age, we learn to react to injustice with defensiveness, to protect ourselves by holding grudges, and to vent our frustration in ways that feel justified. We are told that anger is natural, that it is an honest reflection of our inner truth, and in many ways that is accurate. But anger, when left unchecked, can become a corrosive force, eroding relationships, clouding judgment, and limiting personal growth. Resentment, the quiet cousin of anger, lingers in our hearts and minds, quietly shaping our perceptions and dictating our responses. Transforming these emotions is not about denying them or suppressing them. It is about understanding their origin acknowledging their presence, and consciously redirecting the energy they provide toward compassion, empathy, and constructive action. Anger often arises from perceived injustice, whether personal, social, or systemic. It is the response of a mind that senses a boundary has been violated, a value has been challenged, or an expectation has been unmet. This is not inherently bad. Anger signals that something matters deeply to us. The challenge lies in how we interpret and act upon that signal. Many of us react impulsively, allowing anger to dictate behavior in ways that are reactive rather than intentional. Words are spoken in haste, decisions are made in the heat of emotion, and in retrospect, we recognize the damage that could have been avoided. Transforming anger begins with awareness, being able to notice the surge of emotion before it drives action. Awareness is the first step toward mastery because it gives us the choice to respond consciously rather than react automatically. Resentment is often subtler but equally potent. It festers quietly, often under the guise of memory or reflection. We remember the wrongs done to us, the disappointments endured, and the times when life did not meet our expectations. Over time, these recollections harden into resentment, a heavy stone in the heart that influences our interactions with others. Resentment thrives in the absence of understanding and empathy, growing when we focus on what has been done to us rather than the broader context of life's complexity. To transform resentment, we must engage in a process of reframing, shifting perspective from the narrow lens of personal hurt to a wider understanding of the human experience. This reframing does not excuse harm or invalidate our feelings. It simply allows us to release the grip of negativity and reclaim our emotional energy. The transformation of anger and resentment requires deliberate practice. One of the most effective practices is mindfulness, developing the ability to observe emotions without becoming entangled in them. When anger arises, rather than immediately reacting, we can pause and notice the sensations in our body, the thoughts racing through our mind, and the impulses urging us to act. By creating a space between stimulus and response, we regain control over how we express ourselves. This space allows us to choose words and actions that are aligned with our values rather than dictated by fleeting emotion. Over time, mindfulness strengthens and the automatic pull of anger diminishes, replaced by intentional, thoughtful responses. Empathy is the cornerstone of transforming negative emotions into something constructive. When we take the time to understand the perspective of others, even those who have wronged us, the intensity of anger naturally decreases. Empathy does not mean condoning harmful behavior or accepting injustice passively. It means recognizing the humanity in the person we are responding to. Everyone acts from a combination of experience, fear, desire, and limitation. When we consider these factors, our initial reaction of anger softens, replaced by understanding and eventually compassion. Compassion is the highest expression of empathy because it moves beyond mere recognition of suffering and toward a desire to alleviate it, whether through action, forgiveness, or simply releasing negative attachment. Another powerful tool in transforming anger and resentment is reflection. Journaling, meditation, or simply quiet contemplation allows us to explore the roots of our emotions. What triggers our anger? What past experiences amplify our reaction? By examining these questions, we uncover patterns that guide our behavior, often revealing insecurities, unmet needs, or unhealed wounds that fuel our responses. This introspection is not always easy. It requires courage to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves, yet it is precisely this courage that transforms anger from a destructive force into a catalyst for growth. As we better understand ourselves, we are better equipped to respond to life with clarity and composure. Forgiveness plays a central role in this transformation. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as a gift given to someone else, but its most profound impact is on the one who forgives. Holding on to anger or resentment keeps us tethered to the past, while forgiveness releases that bond and allows us to live fully in the present. Forgiveness does not negate the wrong or imply weakness. It is an act of empowerment. It is a conscious decision to no longer allow another's actions to dominate our inner world. In practicing forgiveness, we create emotional space for peace, understanding, and resilience. The transformation of anger and resentment also involves recognizing the impermanence of life. Everything is transient: emotions, circumstances, relationships, and experiences. Anger that feels overwhelming in the moment is often fleeting, yet it can leave a lasting imprint if we allow it to fester. By cultivating a sense of impermanence, we learn to let go of immediate reactions and see situations in a broader context. This perspective shift reduces the intensity of anger and fosters a more measured, thoughtful approach to life's challenges. Connection with others amplifies the capacity to transform negative emotions. Sharing experiences with trusted friends, mentors, or community members provides insight, perspective, and support. Others can help us see blind spots, challenge our assumptions, and offer alternative ways of responding. Dialogue encourages growth because it disrupts the isolation in which anger and resentment thrive. In community, we learn that our emotional reactions are not fixed, that we are capable of choosing responses that elevate rather than diminish ourselves and those around us. Gratitude acts as a counterbalance to anger and resentment. When we focus on the things we appreciate in life, our relationship, opportunities, achievements, or even simple daily pleasures, we shift our attention from what is lacking or unjust to what is abundant and positive. This shift does not eliminate challenges, but it reframes our perception, reducing the power of negative emotions and increasing our capacity for contentment. Gratitude fosters resilience because it reminds us of the resources, support, and strengths we possess, empowering us to navigate difficulties with composure and hope. Physical and mental practices also support this transformation. Exercise, deep breathing, yoga, and other forms of movement release tension and regulate the nervous system, making it easier to respond to stress without anger. Mental exercises, including visualization, affirmations, and meditation, cultivate clarity and focus, reducing impulsive reactions. The mind and body are interconnected, and nurturing both allows for a more balanced, thoughtful approach to life's challenges. Anger becomes less of a reflex and more of a signal, an opportunity for conscious action rather than uncontrolled reaction. Perspective is critical in transforming resentment. Often what we perceive as a personal attack is a reflection of broader circumstances, misunderstandings, or unintentional actions. By considering alternative explanations, we open ourselves to the possibility that our anger may be disproportionate or misplaced. This is not to deny our feelings, but to approach them with discernment. Seeing situations through multiple lenses encourages flexibility, patience, and a willingness to release judgment, all of which diminish the hold of resentment. The long-term benefits of transforming anger and resentment extend beyond personal well-being. Relationships improve as interactions are no longer colored by past grievances or knee-jerk reactions. Communication becomes clearer, more intentional, and more compassionate. Opportunities for collaboration, connection, and understanding increase because we approach others from a place of openness rather than defensiveness. This ripple effect impacts families, workplaces, communities, and society at large, demonstrating that the transformation of personal emotion can influence collective harmony. Transforming anger also involves recognizing its roots in unmet expectations. When reality does not align with our desires or ideals, frustration naturally arises. By adjusting expectations, cultivating acceptance, and embracing flexibility, we reduce the likelihood of reactive anger. Life is unpredictable, and rigid adherence to how things should be often leads to disappointment and resentment. Acceptance does not mean passivity. It means engaging with reality as it is while maintaining integrity, intention, and agency in our actions. Emotional intelligence is another crucial element. Developing the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions allows us to navigate difficult situations with skill and composure. Emotional intelligence enables us to identify triggers, assess our responses, and consciously choose constructive actions. It is a lifelong practice, one that requires observation, reflection, and continual refinement. As emotional intelligence grows, anger and resentment lose their automatic power, replaced by deliberate, thoughtful engagement with the world. Boundaries are essential in managing anger and resentment. Setting clear, healthy boundaries protects us from unnecessary harm and prevents the accumulation of unresolved grievances. Boundaries are not walls of isolation, they are structures that allow for respectful interaction, mutual understanding, and personal well-being. By establishing limits, we reduce the situations that give rise to anger and resentment, creating space for calm reflection, empathy, and constructive response. Humor can also be a transformative tool. The ability to see the absurdity, irony, or perspective in a challenging situation diffuses tension and reduces the intensity of anger. Humor does not trivialize serious issues, but provides a lens through which we can approach life with lightness and resilience. By cultivating a sense of playfulness and perspective, we prevent resentment from dominating our mental and emotional landscape. Personal growth requires embracing discomfort. Anger and resentment are uncomfortable, and they often signal areas in our lives where we need to evolve. By leaning into this discomfort rather than avoiding it, we develop strength, resilience, and wisdom. Challenges become opportunities for self-reflection, learning, and transformation. The process of navigating difficult emotions strengthens our capacity for empathy, patience, and understanding, gradually diminishing the hold of negative responses. The spiritual dimension reinforces this work. Many spiritual traditions emphasize the importance of releasing anger and resentment, cultivating compassion, and acting with intentionality. Engaging with these principles, whether through study, practice, or community, provides guidance and support in the journey of transformation. Spiritual frameworks remind us that our emotional choices have far-reaching consequences and that the cultivation of positive states, love, compassion, forgiveness, benefits both ourselves and the larger world. Small, consistent actions are more powerful than sporadic, grand gestures. Choosing to respond with calm rather than frustration, to pause instead of reacting, to listen instead of judging. These daily practices accumulate, creating lasting change. Transformation is rarely instantaneous. It is the result of repeated, intentional choices that gradually rewire our emotional patterns. Each moment becomes an opportunity to strengthen the capacity for compassion, understanding, and freedom from resentment. The role of self-compassion cannot be overstated. Often, we direct as much anger and resentment inward as we do outward. We judge ourselves harshly, dwell on past mistakes, and cultivate guilt or shame. By extending the same empathy and understanding to ourselves that we aim to offer others, we reduce internal conflict, enhance resilience, and model a pattern of emotional balance. Self-compassion provides the foundation upon which external compassion and constructive responses are built. History demonstrates that individuals who have transformed anger and resentment create ripple effects far beyond their immediate lives. They inspire change in their communities, model alternative ways of interacting, and leave legacies rooted in empathy rather than conflict. Transformation of personal emotion is not only a private victory, but a contribution to collective harmony, illustrating the profound interconnectedness of our choices and actions. Every day we are presented with countless choices that shape our mindset, our emotions, and our interactions with the world. Some choices are small and fleeting, like the decision to smile at a stranger or to take a deep breath before reacting to frustration. Other choices carry more weight, influencing the trajectory of our relationships, our personal growth, and our emotional well-being. The cumulative impact of these choices determines whether we allow negativity and hate to dominate our experience or whether we cultivate a mindset in which hate loses its power entirely. It is within these seemingly small, consistent decisions that we discover the profound ability to shape our inner world and, consequently, the world around us. The first step in cultivating this mindset is awareness. Awareness of our thoughts, emotions, and reactions provides the foundation upon which all other choices are built. Without awareness, our decisions are guided by habit, impulse, and conditioning, often leading to automatic responses fueled by fear, resentment, or anger. Awareness is the act of pausing in the midst of experience to observe what is happening within us without judgment. It is the recognition that while we cannot always control external events, we have the power to choose how we respond to them. By consistently practicing awareness, we create space for intentionality, a pause in which we can decide whether we will act from hate, fear, or understanding. Mindfulness as a practice strengthens this awareness. When we cultivate mindfulness, we learn to notice the rise of negative emotions before they take control. We feel the tension in our bodies, observe the racing thoughts, and recognize the impulses that demand immediate reaction. This moment of recognition is transformative because it reminds us that emotion is information, not instruction. Anger, irritation, or frustration are signals to examine, reflect, and choose our response, rather than to react automatically. Over time, mindfulness trains the mind to respond with discernment, patience, and composure, weakening the habitual power of hate. Gratitude amplifies this effect. By consciously focusing on the aspects of life we appreciate, the relationships we cherish, the opportunities we have, the simple beauty in everyday moments, we shift the orientation of the mind away from negativity and toward abundance. Gratitude does not negate challenges or injustice, but it reframes our perception, creating a mental environment in which hate struggles to survive. When we habitually acknowledge what is good, we naturally develop resilience and optimism, and the pull of resentment or bitterness diminishes. The mind that practices gratitude consistently finds it increasingly difficult to harbor hate because it is occupied with recognition, appreciation, and connection. Empathy and understanding are central to this transformation. Every individual we encounter is navigating their own struggles, fears, and desires. The actions that provoke us, frustrate us, or wound us are often a reflection of their own internal battles, rather than a true measure of our worth or value. By choosing to consider the perspective of others, we disrupt the reflexive cycle of judgment and anger. Empathy requires intentional effort. We must slow down, suspend assumptions, and imagine life from another's viewpoint. In doing so, we uncover the humanity in others and we recognize that hate is not a necessary or inevitable response. Forgiveness is another powerful tool in cultivating this mindset. Forgiveness is not about excusing wrongdoing or pretending that harm did not occur. It is about freeing ourselves from the grip of negative emotion. When we hold on to anger or resentment, we are tethered to the past, bound to experiences that no longer serve us. Forgiveness releases this bond, allowing us to move forward with clarity, peace, and emotional freedom. It is an act of agency, a conscious decision to reclaim control over our internal world rather than surrendering it to the actions of others. In this way, forgiveness is both an internal liberation and a step toward living in a state where hate loses its relevance. Patience is also a key factor. Developing a mindset where hate loses its power requires the ability to endure discomfort, to tolerate ambiguity, and to resist the immediate urge to react. Life is filled with provocations, misunderstandings, and disappointments, and it is natural to feel irritation or anger in response. Patience allows us to hold space for these emotions without letting them dictate our behavior. It provides the opportunity to pause, reflect, and choose a response that aligns with our values rather than our impulses. Over time, patience becomes a habit, and the tendency to react with hostility diminishes significantly. Boundaries are essential in maintaining this mindset. Choosing where to invest our energy, attention, and emotional labor protects us from unnecessary harm and prevents the accumulatio N of negative emotions. Boundaries are not acts of avoidance or isolation. They are structures that allow us to engage with the world intentionally and constructively. By defining our limits clearly, we create space for healthy interaction and reduce situations that provoke anger or resentment. This conscious allocation of energy reinforces our ability to respond from understanding rather than from a reactive, hate-driven place. Reflection and introspection deepen this work, taking time to examine our emotional patterns, our triggers, and our habitual responses illuminates the ways in which we may unconsciously perpetuate negativity. Journaling, meditation, or simply quiet contemplation provides insight into the root causes of our anger and resentment. Often, what we project onto others is a reflection of unhealed wounds or unmet needs within ourselves. By bringing awareness to these patterns, we reclaim power over our emotions and develop the ability to respond with insight rather than reflex. Connection with supportive communities enhances the development of this mindset. Engaging with people who model empathy, understanding, and composure provides guidance, encouragement, and perspective. Others can challenge our assumptions, offer alternative ways of viewing situations, and provide emotional support when we struggle to maintain balance. Community reminds us that transformation is not a solitary endeavor, and that mutual support strengthens the ability to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. The practice of reframing experiences is transformative. Life is rarely perfect, and challenges, disappointments, and conflicts are inevitable. Reframing involves consciously shifting our perspective to focus on growth, learning, and understanding rather than on frustration or resentment. By interpreting events through a lens of curiosity and reflection rather than judgment and anger, we reduce the power of hate and cultivate a mindset oriented toward possibility, resilience, and empathy. Daily habits reinforce these mental shifts. Simple routines, such as pausing before responding, practicing gratitude each morning, or reflecting on interactions at the end of the day, build consistency in emotional regulation. Repetition strengthens neural pathways, making constructive responses habitual and automatic over time. In this way, daily choices accumulate, gradually reorienting the mind from reactivity and hate to awareness, compassion, and intentionality. Mind-body practices are also invaluable. Engaging in physical activity, deep breathing exercises, yoga, or other forms of movement releases tension and calms the nervous system. When the body is regulated, the mind is more capable of responding with clarity and patience rather than impulsive anger. Physical well-being and emotional balance are deeply intertwined, and nurturing both creates a foundation for a mindset in which hate cannot easily take hold. Exposure to diverse perspectives broadens understanding and reduces the likelihood of entrenched negative reactions. By learning about different cultures, philosophies, and life experiences, we recognize that our judgments are often limited by familiarity and conditioning. This awareness encourages curiosity, humility, and openness, all of which weaken the influence of hate. Understanding that the world is complex and multifaceted allows us to approach others with compassion and consideration rather than anger or resentment. Creativity and expression offer outlets for transforming negative energy. Art, writing, music, and other forms of expression allow us to process emotions constructively, releasing tension and gaining insight. Creative engagement provides a channel through which frustration, anger, or resentment can be transformed into meaning, beauty, or understanding. By regularly practicing creative expression, we cultivate resilience and emotional flexibility, reducing the likelihood of destructive reactions. The understanding of impermanence is profound in shaping this mindset. Life is transient, and every experience, relationship, and challenge is temporary. Recognizing this impermanence encourages us to prioritize what matters most and to release attachment to grievances that serve no purpose. When we see that moments of conflict are fleeting, we gain perspective and the intensity of anger diminishes. This awareness fosters a sense of freedom, allowing us to engage with life fully rather than being weighed down by resentment or hostility. Self-compassion strengthens the ability to respond constructively to challenges. Often, the harshest judgments are directed inward, leading to guilt, shame, or self-directed anger. By practicing kindness and understanding toward ourselves, we model the approach we seek to extend to others. Self-compassion enhances emotional resilience, fosters patience, and provides the internal support necessary to maintain a mindset in which hate loses its influence. The ripple effects of this mindset extend beyond personal benefit. When we respond to conflict with empathy, understanding, and composure, we influence others positively. Relationships improve, communication deepens, and communities become more harmonious. The energy we project outward shapes the experiences we encounter, reinforcing the principle that our choices, no matter how small, carry significant impact. In choosing compassion over hostility, we create an environment in which understanding, cooperation, and connection flourish. Challenges will always arise, yet each is an opportunity to practice choice. Life presents frustrations, disagreements, and misunderstandings, and our response to these moments defines the quality of our experience. Choosing patience, empathy, and intentional action in the face of provocation strengthens the mind, refines character, and cultivates resilience. Over time, these consistent choices reshape habits, reinforce positive neural pathways, and establish a default mode of response rooted in understanding rather than hate. The cultivation of curiosity is transformative. When we approach situations and people with curiosity rather than judgment, we reduce the automatic pull of anger or resentment. Asking questions, seeking to understand motivations, and exploring perspectives encourages openness and reduces the likelihood of reactive hostility. Curiosity shifts the focus from being right or defending oneself to learning and connecting, thereby weakening the influence of hate. Patience, empathy, reflection, gratitude, mindfulness, boundaries, creativity, exposure to diverse perspectives, self-compassion, and curiosity all converge to create a powerful framework. Within this framework, the habitual pull of hate diminishes. The mind, trained and nurtured to rough, consistent choice, becomes a space of clarity, balance, and compassion. The habitual patterns of reaction and negativity give way to intentionality, understanding, and emotional freedom. Daily decisions, moment by moment, thought by thought, build this landscape, demonstrating that the power of hate is not inevitable but is subject to conscious cultivation of a more expansive, understanding, and compassionate mindset.